everybody, it's Neenah. Thanks for joining me for the Altenew product release blog hop of the artist markers. I really wanted to share how I colored these daisies, which I had done while I was at a crafting retreat for Kathy Racusin's 30-day coloring challenge. And I had spent some time using the markers and coloring them with the markers and some Prismacolor colored pencils. And I'll show you how I did the coloring on the flowers. So I'm stamping the images onto some Bristol paper. This is Canson Bristol paper, and I've really loved using this with markers and alcohol markers in particular. I stamped the images twice, so that way I got a really nice crisp impression, really dark and nice and vibrant. Now what you see here are all of the markers from Altenew's artist marker line. There's a lot of really great colors in these marker sets, and they're all meant to be able to work together to create some beautiful blending results. So I'm going to be using quite a few of them today to do some coloring, and I can't wait to keep working with these markers to really get some really beautiful colors with these. So I want to show you first, before we get started, the brush nibs and the bullet nib on the marker. So you have a brush nib on the one end, which is what you see here, and then you have a smaller bullet nib on the other, which is great for working in small detail areas. So I started off by coloring this image by using a really light shade of yellow. There's a really nice, beautiful shade of yellow in the marker set, and I'm using that to fade out some color from the darkest area, which is down towards the center of the flower, and then getting really light as I go out towards the edge of the petal. And I'm doing a very light feathering motion for this. I repeated that throughout the entire flower, and then I brought in a second color, and I'm going to fade in some of that as well, again putting the heaviest amount of color down at the bottom and then feathering it out as we go further out across the petal. So I'm being very careful and not going too far with the second color because I don't want it to be overpowering. And I did also add some of that shading in the nooks and crannies of the flower to help give it a little bit more of a realistic feel. Now this is a great way to be able to use your markers to get some beautiful shading results. However, I wanted to really intensify these, and I'll show you how I intensified the coloring using my colored pencils. I also used a couple of the green shades and added some shading by using the tip-to-tip technique. I felt that the coloring was a little bit too stark between these two shades of green, so to help fix that, I used the tip-to-tip technique where you take the lighter color and add a little bit of the darker color on the tip of it and then fade out that blending, and that really helps give you a nice clean transition, and it doesn't hurt your marker nibs. For the centers of the flowers, I used a couple of yellows. I even added a bit of shaded pink to the centermost part of the flower. And then I also brought in some darker browns along the edges to give the center of the flower a bit more of a depth and more of a really rounded appearance. I used a stippling technique as I got further out into the center of the flower, and that helps give the center a little bit more texture and also helps with the shading as well. I even went a lot darker by taking a really dark brown and adding that on the cornermost areas of the center. And I really love how it gives so much contrast to the flower itself, and you get a really great shaded appearance. Again, I'm putting some stippling as I go further out towards the center of that flower center. And again, I'll go ahead and stipple and drop in more color to fade out those shaded areas. So most of the coloring was pretty simple with the Altenew artist markers. They blend beautifully, and I love the results that you get. I really like how saturated they are, and also the really nice fine tip of that brush nib. Here's where I'm adding more detail to the flowers using my colored pencils. I use Prismacolor colored pencils here, and I'm adding shading in the areas where I have the darkest shading. I started off by using an orange color. I wanted some things that have a little bit more contrast to the yellow. So by bringing in an orange, I get that nice contrast. Then I blended that out with a really light yellow, and that really helps blend all of that marker and colored pencil together. Then with a really intense scarlet color, I added this in the cornermost areas of these flowers. This is a tip that I picked up from Kathy Racusin, and she does this with a black marker and creates the nooks and crannies in her images, and that she adds that in the darkest areas with that black marker. But I wanted something a little bit different. I wanted brighter colors. So I chose to use a bright and very contrasting color to the yellow, and in this case it was a scarlet red, and I really loved the results. Kathy is always so great at coming up with ideas for coloring, and that nooks and crannies technique is really fun to be able to add some even more depth and interest to your flowers. So I blended all of that out finally with a quick round of that same yellow that I had used for the lightest area of my flowers, and that really helps blend the pencil and the markers together even more. You get a really beautiful, seamless transition of color. Now, to save time, I did color the leaves and the stems of the flowers the exact same way that you saw me do the flower petals themselves. The only difference is that I used some different colors. So I used green artist markers to color in the base shaded areas, and then I used some colored pencils in some green shades to add some extra depth and some shaded effects on those leaves. But again, the same techniques were used on the leaves that I did for the petals. For the sky, I simply took a blue artist marker and just very lightly put some flicks of color feathering out from around the images into the white of the paper, and then I used a colorless blender to kind of fade that out and get a lighter transition of color to help it fade into the white paper. Alright, so now moving on to the rest of the card. So I'm taking here the Snapshots stamp set. I'm going to use the little sentiment here. It's a label and it says loved. I thought these would look really cute with the flowers themselves, and I'm going to stamp this in a red ink that matched the red color that I had used for the nooks and crannies of the flowers. I think that really helps draw out that red color in the flowers and complements the entire card nicely. So this red ink is from Altenew. This is the Crimson ink pad, and I'm stamping this onto the same white paper that I had used to color my flowers, so that way the whites matched. I die cut both panels with a Simon Says Stamp stitched rectangle die, and then I'm going to take the new notebook edge die from Altenew and cut the top edge of each of these panels with that die. And that creates a really fun notebook edge to the paper, and it's a really fun and different feel, which I really like. I also tied a bit of May Arts twine to the top of each of these panels and just tied that in a simple bow across the top. I think this really adds to the natural feel of the flowers and draws in some of those browns. I really like trying to pick out colors that are in my images that I've colored to help complement the entire card and really bring to focus the feel and style of whatever it is that I've colored. So I'm trying to go with some more natural colors and elements here to help draw in that natural feel of the flowers. I layered another piece of paper that I had cut in the same way that I had done the flower panels, but this is a sticky note piece of cardstock from Fawn. I layered those flat onto my Neenah Desert Storm card base, and then my sentiment I'm going to pop up with a piece of foam tape, and I'm going to line that up perfectly parallel to the bottom of the card base. Because these panels are cattywampus, I wanted to make sure that there was something that was going to be parallel with the card base itself to help balance everything out. So I hope that you enjoyed this video and got some inspiration on using the new artist markers from Altenew and combining them with colored pencils to get some really beautiful and detailed results in your coloring. This video is part of the Altenew release blog hop for the artist markers, so I encourage you to head on over to my blog to get information on the blog hop as well as enter into giveaways. If you enjoyed this video, here are two more that you might like featuring some Altenew products. Thanks so much for stopping by and spending some time with me. I will be back again soon with another video for you. And until then, thanks for watching.